Well, Monday, November 10th marks the start of the 30th United Nations Climate Change Conference, otherwise known as COP30, which this year is taking place in Belém, Brazil. Ahead of the start of that UN gathering, around 50 world leaders and stakeholders are meeting this Thursday and Friday under the Brazilian president's leadership for a preview of sorts on this year's objectives. Coming 3 years after the world's first climate conference and 10 years after the landmark Paris Climate Agreement, this year's gathering, though, is less aimed at setting new goals than it is at ensuring that the international community respects existing ones. For now, we've already heard from the Brazilian President Lula. We also heard from the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, both of them offering rather bleak assessments of the current state of affairs. Guterres saying that the world has led a moral failure by failing to respect the 1.5 limit. Brazil's President Lula saying that there's just a short window left to save Earth, and it's closing rapidly. For more on this, we'll cross now to our Brazilian correspondent, Tim Vickery in Rio. Tim, so like I said, the COP starts on Monday, but there's a lot of movement today and tomorrow. Why this format with a preview of the summit and then the summit itself?
Yeah, traditionally, this meeting of world leaders is the start of the COP. Brazil have done this differently. With this meeting today and tomorrow, 57 world leaders, more than 140 countries represented. And they've organised this before the official start of the COP, which is on Monday, because this is a format that gives more time and more flexibility to debate the question. Nothing that will happen over the next couple of days is binding. And this means that over the 2 days, there is liberty, there is freedom to talk over the issues in some depth. And what this really is, I think, is Lula and Brazil attempting to make a stake for global leadership in an environment where international cooperation is increasingly difficult. This is Lula taking the lead, trying to really push this issue and saying, look, if we don't turn promises into practice, the world's population will lose faith in us. We have to do it now. So it's a new initiative for Brazil, more time, more flexibility for the world leaders to debate the problem.
So tell us more, Tim, about what is on the agenda then for this preview today and tomorrow.
There's mainly 3 issues on the agenda. One is efforts to transition to sustainable energy. Another is looking back 10 years after the Paris Accord. What has happened to those targets? Why haven't they been met? Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, saying that the 1.5 degree raise will be inevitable overshoot. And those investing in fossil fuels are at this stage betting against humanity. So there'll be an element of bookkeeping, looking at those targets set 10 years ago. Why haven't they been met? What needs to happen for them to be met? But there's also a new initiative. And again, this is being led by Brazil, known as the Tropical Forest Forever Fund. Now, Lula remembers being at the COP in Copenhagen in 2009. Where all sorts of promises were made by the rich countries to transfer money to the poor countries. This hasn't happened. And so what Brazil and Lula are trying to do is go beyond donations as a means of preserving the forest. And so they're trying to bring market practices with this huge fund, which will reward those countries that are able to preserve forests on the basis that doing so is more profitable than destroying them. So they're looking for at least $125 billion cooperation between the public sector and the private sector, where not only those countries that preserve the forests will be rewarded, but also the investors in the fund. This is, maybe surprisingly from a left-leaning government, this is an attempt to find a market-based solution to the problem of preserving the rainforests. This is Brazil's big initiative, and this is being seen as the most important novelty, the most important new initiative to come out of COP30.